Microsoft Copilot AI was a huge failure across its cloud and non-cloud platforms. What the hell happened, Microsoft? Let's talk about it.
Has Microsoft 365 Copilot been a complete disaster or a success story?
Microsoft just keeps losing with AI. Like, why would I need Copilot to change my resolution? Does everything on GitHub have to be Copilot?
Bill Gates is reportedly furious as Copilot faces massive backlash. And the reason is simple. Microsoft promised an AI revolution that would transform how the world works, then poured billions into OpenAI deals, AI infrastructure, and polished marketing demos. Copilot was supposed to sit inside Word, Excel, Outlook, and Windows and magically boost productivity. That was the vision. Now we have real adoption numbers, real lawsuits, and real user complaints. The hype looks very different under a spotlight.
As something that was rather annoying and not necessarily adding value, and of course it's adding cost to the platform. Indeed, Microsoft is attempting to have its users pay for Copilot.
Let's start with adoption. Microsoft 365 has around 400 to 450 million users globally. Copilot was positioned as the must-have add-on at $30 per user per month. That is $360 per year on top of an existing subscription. After all that promotion, reports suggest that only about 3 to 4% of eligible users are actually paying for Copilot. That means well over 90% of users looked at it and said, "No thanks." That is not a minor hesitation. That is a massive rejection.
This resulted in a bunch of pushback out there and a multitude of things where folks really kind of describe Microsoft as overstepping in pushing Copilot onto their existing customer base and forcing it down the throats of users that
even weekly usage comparisons look uncomfortable. Some reports estimate that Copilot attracts around 20 million users per week across its different integrations. That might sound impressive until you compare it to competitors like ChatGPT and Google's AI products, which pull in hundreds of millions of weekly users. When your biggest selling point is AI leadership and your usage is a fraction of your rivals, the boardroom conversations must be interesting. How do you spend billions and still trail so far behind in raw engagement?
Of enterprise IT has pushed back on Microsoft around this. And so Microsoft is going to do something to respond to it. They're not just going to prod forward and hopefully people forget about it or it fixes itself, but it's going to be damage that's going to be difficult to fix. In many cases, it's going to be irreparable.
Microsoft leadership often highlights growing engagement and strong enterprise interest. Those phrases sound polished. Investors tend to ask for something more specific. If adoption were booming, exact numbers would likely be front and center in every earnings call. Instead, there has been noticeable hesitation around detailed metrics. That alone raises eyebrows. When numbers are strong, companies publish them loudly. When numbers are awkward, they get wrapped in broad language.
It should be helpful for those sorts of tasks that are easy to automate, but in many cases it got it wrong. It pulled up links that didn't work, documents that didn't exist, things like that. So much so that people had to put a question mark after everything Copilot generated.
Then there is the pricing strategy. In Australia, regulators decided they had seen enough. The Australian Competition and Consumer Commission took Microsoft to court, alleging that around 2.7 million consumers were misled over Microsoft 365 subscription changes tied to Copilot. Prices for certain plans reportedly jumped by as much as 45%. The watchdog claims that cheaper classic plans without Copilot were not clearly presented and were effectively buried in cancellation flows. That is not a good look for a company already facing AI skepticism.
Forms. So this resulted in probably a pushback against a technology that I've never seen before in my career. And so users new and old have told Microsoft by no uncertain terms that they didn't want Copilot for the majority of users out there. And
think about the optics. You launch an AI feature that only a small fraction of users actually want to pay for. Then you bundle it into plans and increase prices. Regulators accuse you of hiding cheaper options. Was this the master strategy? Was the plan really to convince people they love Copilot by making it harder to avoid? These are the kinds of questions critics are asking. The lawsuit alone shows that backlash has moved beyond online forums and into legal territory.
So the net time saved didn't consistently feel like it was worth the effort. And I kind of stress that a lot as well. So in other words, the times that I did use Copilot, I felt I wanted my time back.
User frustration has also grown because Copilot is not just a separate tool. It is embedded everywhere. Buttons appear in Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Outlook, and even Windows itself. For many users, the complaint is simple. They did not request an AI assistant inside every menu. They wanted stability, performance, and fewer ads in core system areas. Instead, they received more AI panels. The comparison to Clippy from the early 2000s is impossible to ignore. That assistant was mocked relentlessly. History has a strange sense of humor.
So in Excel, where users expected deterministic results, Copilot's natural language interface could feel like a step backward compared with formulas and structured analysis, especially when it misunderstood the data in context.
Online communities have been blunt. Threads asking how to disable Copilot or remove it from Windows appear regularly. Some IT professionals publicly describe it as intrusive. Developers have complained about AI prompts appearing when they are trying to focus. Microsoft frames this as proactive assistance. Many users describe it as interruption. That gap between corporate messaging and user experience is part of the backlash story.
Copilot should be fairly well integrated into how people use those platforms, and it wasn't, and people found it to be a waste of time.
The forced integration strategy raises another concern. If only a small percentage of users voluntarily subscribe, embedding Copilot deeply into the operating system and core apps feels less like organic demand and more like pressure. When adoption is low, doubling down does not automatically create love. It can create resistance. Microsoft clearly believes AI is the future of computing. That belief may be correct in the long term. The current numbers suggest that the market is not fully convinced by this specific implementation.
And Copilot became to be a huge failure in the eyes of Windows users, Microsoft users, people who are using 365, people like me who are maybe on the Mac ecosystem or Linux ecosystem that may be using Office.
Bill Gates has spent decades shaping Microsoft's reputation around practicality and widespread utility. The company became dominant by building tools people depended on daily. Copilot was supposed to be the next big leap. Instead, it faces lawsuits, low adoption rates, user complaints, and skeptical analysts. For a product marketed as revolutionary, the early chapters read more like damage control. The real issue is not whether AI has potential. It clearly does. The issue is whether Copilot, as priced and implemented, delivers enough value to justify the cost and disruption. When more than 90% of eligible users decline to pay for something, that is not a subtle signal. It is a flashing warning light. Microsoft can continue to push forward and refine the product. For now, the numbers show that the revolution has not arrived the way it was promised.
Is that Microsoft is like a bull in a china shop. They will keep coming at you. So I thought we'd take a look at some evidence.
Beyond adoption and pricing drama, there is the growing concern around security and data exposure. Copilot works by accessing large volumes of organizational data inside Microsoft 365. Emails, documents, spreadsheets, chat logs, meeting transcripts. That access is necessary for AI summaries and suggestions. It is also exactly what makes security teams nervous. Several cybersecurity firms have warned that over-permissioned AI tools can surface sensitive information users were never meant to see. If your internal permissions are messy, Copilot can amplify that mess instantly.
Users resented the always there feeling, especially in Windows, because it looked like clutter or bloatware. And they wanted a clear, durable off switch rather than a feature that keeps resurfacing. And so people called it the Clippy of 2000.
Data classification inside many companies is not perfect. Legacy permissions often allow broader access than intended. When Copilot scans across files to answer a question, it may pull information from places users forgot were accessible. Security experts describe this as data oversharing risk. That risk is not theoretical. If an employee asks Copilot for a summary of a project and it includes confidential material from another department, the damage is already done. Was the plan to roll out AI before fixing long-standing permission chaos? Regulated industries face even tougher scrutiny. Financial firms, healthcare providers, and government agencies operate under strict compliance rules. They must track who accesses what data and why. Copilot's data processing model can feel opaque to compliance officers. Questions about cross-tenant data exposure, context leakage, and auditability have slowed adoption in certain sectors. Microsoft says enterprise-grade protections are in place. Risk officers respond by asking for detailed documentation. Until that trust gap closes, broad deployment remains cautious.
Users got frustrated when Copilot's outputs were confident but wrong. That means hallucinations, by the way, if you know AI, often enough that they had to double check anyway, turning help into an extra review steps. In other words,
Accuracy has also become a major talking point. Copilot is built on large language models that can generate impressive text quickly. They can also hallucinate. That means confidently producing incorrect information. Multiple reports and user tests have shown Copilot summarizing documents inaccurately or generating flawed analysis. In one public test, AI-generated summaries of business transcripts contain factual errors in roughly 1/3 of cases. That is not a rounding error. That is a serious reliability issue for business use.
Necessarily adding value. And of course, it's adding cost to the platform. Indeed, Microsoft is attempting to have its users pay for Copilot. So this resulted in a bunch of pushback out there and a multitude of things where folks really kind of describe Microsoft as overstepping in.
Imagine presenting a Copilot-generated report to executives, only to discover the numbers are wrong. That scenario has played out more than once. Marketing managers and analysts have posted about AI tools misinterpreting data structures and calculating incorrect percentages. When a tool costs $360 per user annually, people expect it to reduce errors, not introduce them. Microsoft emphasizes that users should always review AI output. That is reasonable advice. It also reduces the promised time savings if every suggestion requires careful verification. The productivity claim itself is under scrutiny. Microsoft marketing highlighted major efficiency gains, streamlined workflows, and faster content creation. Watchdog groups have noted that some of the supporting studies relied on self-reported perceptions rather than objective performance metrics. Feeling more productive and actually being more productive are not always the same thing. If Copilot suggestions require heavy editing, the time benefit shrinks quickly.
I see Copilot popping up time and time again for no particular reason, and Microsoft is in essence pushing it upon us as something they feel we need and should use and get good at.
Large dataset handling has also frustrated users. Some complain that Copilot struggles with very large Excel files unless they are stored in specific locations like SharePoint or OneDrive. That adds workflow friction. For teams already juggling cloud storage rules and collaboration tools, additional constraints are not welcome. If the AI only works smoothly under narrow conditions, its real-world value becomes limited. For now, the backlash reflects a mismatch between ambition and delivery. AI is powerful. It is not magic. When companies promise transformation and deliver mixed results, the reaction is predictable. Billions in investment do not automatically translate into user enthusiasm. In technology, numbers tell the story. At this stage, those numbers are not as flattering as the launch presentation suggested.